The situation in the East China Sea, I think, continues to be somewhat unpredictable. There is a risk of accident, particularly between China and Japan. We've seen a movement of some of the activity away from the seas and into the air. Now, Chinese are still making patrols into the 12 nautical mile territorial zone around the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands. But they're doing so in a regularized way, and the number of incursions is down really from October 2013, and the number of ships that they are actually sending into the territorial waters is also down. So I think the risk of accident is lower at sea. The behavior of the Coast Guard ships, law enforcement vessels on both sides, is fairly predictable. But in the air, especially since the establishment of the Air Defense Identification Zone by China in November 2013, we've seen a lot of activity. And the Chinese had for a long time not really been aggressively flying against Japanese surveillance or reconnaissance planes. We've seen that kind of aggressive activity against the United States for over a decade. And of course, recently, about a month ago, there was an incident with a US P-8 that was very dangerous. So we're seeing this now with Chinese increased activity to intercept Japanese reconnaissance flights that are flying near China. The Japanese are not that familiar with the rules of engagement of Chinese fighters because this activity is relatively new. And Chinese pilots are not as well trained as the Japanese, and certainly not as American pilots. And that really heightens the risk of an accident in the air. So there is very much a need to put in place some risk reduction measures and the kinds of things that, in fact, that Chinese and Japanese were talking about prior to Japan's purchase of the 3 Senkaku Islands in September 2012. So hotlines, and not just between maybe air forces, but also Navy, and I would suggest also between Coast Guards, would be very useful. And there needs to be, I think, greater transparency. The US and China are talking now about having an agreement to notify each other about major military incidents. That's something that I think Japan and China could also benefit from.